All right, we're live on YouTube.
Okay, Wayne, we're ready to roll.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening. The May 11th, 2021 regular board meeting of ISD 63 Roseville Area School Board is hereby called to order. Clerk Johnson, could you please take the roll?
Of course. Director Chu,
Here.
Director Shaw. Director Anderson,
Here.
Treasurer Goggins,
Here.
Chair Bogoshevsky,
Here.
and Clerk Johnson is here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Superintendent, do we have any agenda adjustments?
No, there aren't any.
Thank you, sir. We do have a couple announcements to start with, and for those, I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Dr. Jenny Lake. Dr. Lake.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I am so excited to introduce two new familiar and fantastic faces to you this evening. First up, Miss Melissa Sonic has accepted the leadership role of Assistant Superintendent. Currently, Ms. Sonic is an elementary program administrator in Roseville Area Schools. Previously, she served the role of principal at Edgerton Elementary School for 5 years. Ms. Sonic is an outstanding educational leader who helped drive the creation of our roadmap to return distance learning guidance throughout the course of the pandemic. Also, Ms. Sonic is seen as a principal coach throughout the state due to her dedicated leadership with the Minnesota Principals Academy and the University of Minnesota. With that, I'm proud to introduce Ms. Melissa Sonic as the next Assistant Superintendent in Roseville Area Schools.
Hey, congratulations, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Bogoshevsky and Dr. Lake. I appreciate that. When I came to Roseville 7 years ago, it felt like coming home. 623 is my family. It's where I want to be. And I could not be more excited and honored to be your next assistant superintendent. And tonight, I'd like to talk a little bit just to share briefly about myself, a brief vision for the future, and then just close us out with my promises and commitments to the Roseville Area Schools. One of my favorite authors says, "What you know matters, but who you are matters more." And I believe that's true because who we are is how we lead. And so I'm going to try to tell you just a little bit about who I am. I am a mom and a wife. Between my husband and I, we have 5 children. And being an educational leader is a lot like being a mom. You have people in your care, and your job is to help them be their best versions of themselves, have high expectations, and love them fiercely through it. I'm also a teacher. When I left the classroom, I told myself I would never forget what it feels like to be a teacher on stage all day, creating community and building relationships, supporting students academically, socially, emotionally. And one of my mantras that I hang on to is always a teacher. I'm also an educational leader, and no matter what my title has been as an instructional coach or a principal or elementary program administrator and now assistant superintendent, I am a leader. And so I want to just share 2 elements of my leadership that are important to me. One is I strive to be a relational leader. I vow to love people before I try to lead them. And love is something that I don't think we talk enough about in education, but it's what this work is really about. It's love for our students, our families, our staff, our schools, our community, our district. I once heard a quote that love is the selfless act of developing others. And if that's true, then our schools should simply ooze with love. I also strive to be an equitable leader. I have seen the timeline of oppression and systemic racism across the history of public schools. And while we didn't create that system, we need to interrupt it. We need to dismantle white supremacy and change oppressive practices and policies and be an anti-racist school district. And so that is who I am. I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, and I'm a leader. As I said earlier, I could not be more excited and honored to be the next assistant superintendent in Roseville area schools. I look forward to continued good work with all of you, with our administrators, our staff, our families, and our students. I look forward to building relationships 360 degrees and fostering a culture of excellence when it comes to instruction, equity, leadership, teamwork, and cultivating resilience. There's a lot of kids out there counting on us to get it right. And together, I believe that we can be the school district that they deserve. And so I'd like to close with my promises and commitments. I commit to run alongside our educators, aligned to our vision to get results and accomplish our mission of quality teaching and learning for all, equity in all we do. I commit to being a leader, a relational, courageous, servant, learning, anti-racist, equitable leader. I promise I will fall short sometimes. And when that happens, I will try to make things right, learn from my mistakes, and do better. I commit to working with you to dismantle white supremacy and to be an anti-racist school district. And I commit to do everything in my power to be the assistant superintendent that the Roseville area schools deserves. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks for sharing all that with us. We really appreciate it. Any thoughts or additional comments or questions from our fellow board members? Melissa,
Yeah.
great. Oh, Curtis, go ahead.
I couldn't leave without saying something. So, congratulations, and I know you're going to do a great job. Fortunately, Roseville area schools has a track record of great assistant superintendents, including our current ones. I remember the first time I met you, and you were talking about being a teacher, and truly, whether or not you're in the classroom, being a teacher is what you are, who you are, and not what you do. So that was evident then, and it's evident now. So congratulations.
Thanks, Curtis. I appreciate that.
With that, Dr. Lake, we'll continue. I think you have another announcement for us.
Yes, thank you. I am equally excited to announce that Mr. Delon Smith has accepted the role of Director of Equity in Roseville area schools. Currently, Mr. Smith is the principal of Harambe Elementary School, and over the course of the past 3 years, Principal Smith's leadership has transformed Harambe into the caring and first-class elementary school it is today. His focus on creating a transformative turnaround art school, combined with his organization and enthusiasm for community within the Harambe House system, has set the foundation for Harambe to grow and excel long into the future. With that, I'm proud to introduce Mr. Delon Smith as the new Roseville Area Schools Director of Equity.
Welcome. And Delon, similarly, a few words or thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Jenny, for that awesome introduction. So I think Jenny just cut my introduction in half because she read half my introduction. No, I'm just joking. But thank you. That was very generous of you. So I don't know. I just decided to kind of put some thoughts down from my introduction. So I hope you'll go with me. But greetings, school board members, and thank you for making room in your agenda for me. I truly appreciate it. And just real quick, I remember the last time I had an introduction with this board. It was a month after I was supposed to have an introduction with this board. And so I'm just glad I made it on time this time. So thank you. So in the words of the great Whitney Houston, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. These 6 instructions, so effortlessly sung by Whitney Houston 35 years ago, are a prescription that can rehabilitate our educational system. If we believe that children are our future and that they will accomplish things that we have yet to see, then we will teach them well. We will be intentional about what we present to them, and we'll be tireless in our efforts to prepare for them. Then we can let them lead the way. Let them tell us what educating them looks like. Let the things that speak to their culture lead us to how we teach them. Through that validation of their culture, we have the power and the obligation to show them all the beauty that they possess inside by giving them opportunities that are engaging and that mine for the beautiful strength that is already in them. This will give them a sense of pride, and it'll make it easier for us to engage them and for them to acquire self-motivation. Then we can enjoy the fruits of this labor as the children laugh and smile and show love because they are safe, they're being taken care of, and they are happy. Since 1999, I've committed to these 6 instructions in the world of public education. From a teacher's aide to a behavior dean, a teacher, an assistant principal, the proud principal of Harambe, and soon to be a director, I've cultivated relationships, I've inspired young people to be their best selves, and I've pushed colleagues to do better. As a director of equity and innovation, I commit to maintain that standard. That's the end of my prepared remarks. I just want to thank you once again for giving me the time to speak to you today. And I look forward to great things that we'll do here in Roseville.
Thank you, Delon. Well, congratulations. And I know, you know, I think we grabbed you from where was it? Jenny Lind is when you left to come to us, or
Yes.
wherever you were? Yeah. And Harambe has a special place in my heart, many of our hearts on the board, just because of my kids were students there long ago. And, you know, it is a unique environment, right? It's not just the year round, but you don't have a natural neighborhood. You're working with families and parents from all over. And plus it's legacy, right? Way back, starting with not just EMID, but Tri-District before that as an initial pioneer in equity and bringing equity to the school kids across the metro way back when. So I think you've taken that and we're just the right guy at the right time. And, you know, I'm going to say something that's another trite saying that people say about people, and it probably applies to all of our staff and teachers, but I think it particularly was what was needed at Harambe, and you brought it with you. And that's that old line about how people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. And I think the people who have worked with you and met you know you care, and it's genuine, authentic. So thank you. And I'm delighted that you're going to be bringing that to the new role. So any additional thoughts from other board members or anybody on the Zoom? Well, thank you. Congratulations. Oh, Kitty, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that we've been so fortunate to have both of these excellent leaders in many different roles in the district and had an opportunity to see how they contribute. Or outside of the district, I've had a chance to work with Delon as well, and just wanted to thank you and really look forward to your leadership in your new roles. We know you're going to continue to add a lot to our district, so thank you.
And I'm going to say too, and Board Member Anderson, I know neither one of you will be shy about letting us know what you need. We're here to help. We're here to help and be a part of this together. So welcome aboard, both of you.
Definitely. So again, congratulations, Melissa and Dawn, and congratulations, even Superintendent Sicoli, and the years you've spent here, and the legacy of building and maintaining a wonderful staff and administrative leaders who are poised and able to step up into those next levels. So thank you all. All right, with that, is there any community input that we had tonight, either Michelle or Superintendent Sicoli? There's no one here in the room.
No community input tonight.
Thank you. I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda less the gifts and retirements.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? None. Could we take the vote, Curtis?
Treasurer Goggins.
Aye.
Director Anderson.
Aye.
Chair Boguszewski.
Aye.
Director Shaw.
Aye.
Director Chu.
Aye.
And Clerk Johnson votes aye.
Thank you. We did have a couple retirements. Clerk Johnson, could you share those with us?
It would be my pleasure. We have 2 retirements. Janet Maitre-Jean from Brimhall Elementary and Clara Sabone from Little Canada Elementary, combined 48 years of service within the Roseville area schools. They're the one constant when we do retirements seems to be that people spend a lot of time here, and it is it never gets old saying that it is appreciated. So with that, I humbly would submit the acceptance of these retirements.
Can we have a second?
Second with great appreciation.
Thank you, Kitty. Let's take the roll.
Chair Boguszewski.
Aye.
Did you, is that my name? I'm sorry, it cut out.
Yeah. Treasurer Goggins.
Aye.
Director Chu.
Aye.
Director Shaw.
Aye.
Director Anderson.
Aye.
And Clerk Johnson votes aye.
Thank you. We also did have, as always, some gifts, and I think Director Goggins is going to share those with us this evening.
Yes, we are, as always, extremely fortunate on the community support we receive. Emmett Williams received from Donald H. and Vivian H. Huth, Revocable Living Trust, very significant, generous funds for educational enrichment needs. Parkview Center School received from Medtronic EQ Share Owner Services, funds for principal discretion. Roseville Area High School received from Warren Young, funds for the wrestling team. The high school also received from the boys lacrosse boosters, funds for boys lacrosse. The New Directions Inc. provided the high school funds for boys golf. The B. Dale Club Inc. provided funds for the trap team at the high school. And the Minnesota Safari Club International provided funds for the trap team also. Continue to thank our generous community to be able to support these activities our students are involved in, and providing the best experience we can. So thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing those, Kitty. And yes, I think we're all left breathless from time to time at the continued support that we have from our community. So thank everyone. Thank you, everyone. With that, we'll move into reports and non-action items. And it looks like we have one this evening, which is a discussion of the options for the operating levy referendum ballot questions. And it looks like Business Director Sherry Thompson will start us off on this topic tonight. Sherry. And Sherry, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
I was so busy with screen sharing that I forgot to unmute. So
There you go.
my screen.
Yes, we can
Yes.
see it all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So so this evening, well, first of all, is in many meetings, not only does the board receive information and make decisions regarding staffing and our programs and activities, but always looking at financial health. Our budget, which is you take action on, and you'll be taking action on another revision tonight, is something that's discussed quite often. Looking forward, and has been up for discussion for some time, is our operating levy that will be actually expiring on June 30th of 2022. So some decisions need to be made before the election cycle this coming fall. So again, to continue the conversation, the ongoing conversation. So looking at Roseville Schools, obviously we are fortunate. We are known for our strong educational programs, our talented and caring staff, shared vision of excellence. We have been very fortunate to have generous and reliable financial support from our community. As far as financial transparency and credibility, we are always working towards that. Most recently, we did receive a certificate of excellence for excellent comprehensive financial reporting. And through the hard work in building some of our reserves, we have had our credit outlook upgraded by Moody's Financial Services. The district is primarily funded by state dollars. Just under 75% of our funds come from the state. We do receive about 20% of our funding comes from local property taxes or local levies. A small percent, anywhere from 3 to 4% of our funds each year come from federal funds. And then just under 3% comes from other. That can be fees, grants, etc. But the big chunk is state, and then again, followed by local levies. As we've shared in the past, our funding in going back to 2003, the funding at the state level, at the legislative level, has not kept pace with inflation. So if we looked at that inflationary factor each year, and looking at where our funding currently is on the state level, we would be receiving about $500 more per student, which would equate to about $4 million in this year alone. So we have that $4 million gap that's due to the state funding not keeping pace. In addition, we provide very critical special education programs that our students are very deserving of. However, the way the funding formula currently works with the state and federal funding, we have to subsidize about $10 million out of our general fund to cover the cost of those services. So that it puts increased pressure on our general fund. We also right now, as a result of the pandemic, as the board is aware, we are receiving some federal COVID relief dollars. Those funds, thankfully, will help us cover our pandemic-related costs. Those are some funds that will be there for a couple of years, but they are one-time costs, and they don't help with our sustainability going forward. And when I talk about funding not keeping pace, if we look at the last 8 years, we have cut about $8 million total over the 8-year period. So it's that continuous cycle of making those cuts. When we look at our fund balance, the board has a fund balance policy, a very minimal policy, probably one of the lowest, if not the lowest in the state. You have set a target of a 3% fund balance in the unassigned. If you look back at these in recent years, even going back 10 years, we have struggled to maintain that. We did see an increase in our fund balance this last year. Some of that, a lot of that was even in the case of not incurring some of the substitute costs when we moved to distance learning. Those short-term costs due to the pandemic were minimal. From March to June, we saw the extended impact of the pandemic as we moved into the new fiscal year, our existing fiscal year. But there again, we have had to make substantial cuts over the years to hit these the minimal fund balance. And in most cases, I think the belief here has been that we're not in the banking business, we're in the kid business. However, one of the things that has hurt us even as far as our credit reviews with Moody's is the fact that our fund balance is so low. We rely on that fund balance for rainy day reserves. If the state shuts down, for instance, if the legislature doesn't complete their business, in the case of a pandemic, that fund balance is really what we rely on. And for us, at that 3%, that's less than 3 weeks of operating costs. So we really have maintained a very minimal amount. Also, when we talk about the levy, who sets the levy? So in the case of local governments, typically local governments in Minnesota, cities, counties, school districts, cities and counties calculate their budget, and then they figure out how much they're getting in other aids. And that's how they determine what their local levy or what amount they need to get from their local property taxpayers. In the case of school districts, That authority either has to be set by the legislature, which is why we rely so heavily on the legislature and on that state funding formula, or it needs to be approved by the voters. So we, as all of you know, don't arbitrarily determine how much we needed to balance our budget, because it comes either authorized by the legislature or going out to our local voters, whether that's for levy or for operating funds or for building bonds. We have continued to see over the last couple decades, actually, and we're not alone in this, a growing dependence on our operating referendum. And going back to 92, 93, only 65% of school districts had operating referendum revenue, and that averaged $332 per pupil. Yes, I'm totally going to date myself when I say those funds those were the things that provided the bells and whistles. Fast forward to 2021, all Minnesota school districts have referendum revenue and or what's called local option revenue authority, and it averages $1,570 per pupil. And again, this includes outstate. This is the average throughout the state. Of this amount, 846 is voter approved and 724 is what's called local option revenue. So statewide referendum revenue, including the local option, provides 14.3% of general fund operating revenue. So you can see throughout the state, there's a continued reliance or dependence on those funds. In Roseville, our referendum revenue for the same period is $1,677. Again, compared with the statewide average of $1,570. Our operating levies, they provide locally approved funding to support our operations, as you know, classroom materials, teachers, and other staff. Again, it's no longer the bells and whistles. We rely heavily on these funds to provide our programming. The last operating levy increase, requested 15 years ago in 2006. So we really do work hard to live within our means and only go back to our voters when necessary. Now, there's some confusion as far as levies versus bonds. In 2017, we were very fortunate for that our community strongly supported passage of a bond referendum. Bonds are for building. We can't spend those on operating costs, just as we say levies are for learning. So those are operating funds. And we can't commingle the two. As I mentioned, our last bond, our building bond request was in 2017, and prior to that was 1992. Then looking at others, looking at our conference, for instance, looking at others around us, when we compare voter approved operating levy, and again, these are all within our conference with the exception of North St. Paul, which is our neighbor. So that's why we've included that here. You can see how we compare to others as far as voter approved operating levy for the current year, for the 2021 year. We're at about $954. North St. Paul is slightly less than us at $877. And those amounts vary then throughout our conference, our athletic conference. Our current levy, as I mentioned, and has been discussed with the board for several months, will expire if it's not renewed by our voters this fall. That would mean effective July 1st of 2022, we would lose $8 million per year, or about 8% of our general operating budget. Our general fund budget is about $105 million. Without even with renewal, without additional revenue, our cycle of cuts will continue. You have some options, and we can take a look at those. Options for November 2021 ballot is a levy renewal or a levy renewal plus a possible increase in that funding. So just a reminder, and this timeline has been presented before, you did receive results from a community survey that was completed earlier this spring. We'll look at some of the levy scenarios. We are awaiting an update. The legislative session is due. They are due to adjourn on May 17th, less than a week from today. And I haven't heard anything today, but hopefully today was a better day at the legislature than recent days. And we will provide an update on May 25th. And then June 8th, we will bring back options and sample ballot language and look for the board to vote on that on June 22nd. So a couple of different scenarios, as I mentioned. We would likely recommend multiple questions. The first question, of course, being to request renewal of that current authority that you need to vote on of 962.20 of the current operating levy authority, plus an inflationary factor for 10 years. And when I say inflationary factor, that's something that's built into the ballot language. It's very common. That's the authority that we currently have right now. That inflationary factor is set by the state, and that has been increasing anywhere from about 2.1 to 2.3% over the last 8 years since we've had this levy in place. There would then have to be a decision on a second question as to whether you increase that amount, ask for additional authority. One of the options, I mean, the state does set a cap. The current cap amount authorized by the state is $1,867.88. So that would be an increase of $905 over the current $962.20 for that same 10-year period. Or you could consider requesting an increased authority in amount to adequately address some of the issues that we're facing. Increase class sizes, maintaining our comprehensive programs, and providing financial stability. That would be about $1,800 per pupil unit in total, or an increase of $837.80. And there again, with that inflationary factor. What does that look like? And I know, like, in your packets, I'm not sure how well you can see it here. I know it's also in your packets, and there's a separate sheet. And I know a survey, this was included in the survey as well. But looking at question 1, which is just the renewal, on average, or a median price home in the district is roughly about $250,000. So renewal, because of the increase in the tax base, would result in an annual decrease of about $7 per year. So there really wouldn't be any impact to taxes with the renewal. Now, should that amount increase as you move across there on the $250,000, if the district were to go out and ask for that $1,800 per pupil, there would be an overall increase of about $19 a month, which would equate to about $230 for that $250,000 home in the school district tax. Then I'm going to keep moving to the right. If we were to request an increase to the cap, that would have an impact of about $25 per month or $299 per year. So on this spreadsheet, and this is also included in the board packet, not only as part of this packet, but at the end, you can see the different valued properties. Again, this is estimated on what we think the growth will be as far as the tax base. And these numbers were put together by Ellers, our public financial advisor. So that is all I have. We'll stand for any questions. And I know
Thank
this.
you, Sherry.
Yes.
Thank you. So fellow board members, any questions, Sherry? I'd say leave it up in case someone wants to refer to a page. Frank?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that presentation. The increase, which is almost doubling the amount we're asking for, is so both of the increases. Can you tell us how much revenue would be generated on a yearly basis?
Yes, thank you, Frank. I missed that very key point because I was zeroing in on tax impact. So if we were to increase to the $1,800 per pupil unit,
yeah,
that would generate about $6.5 million. $6.5 million a year. Going to the cap would generate about just over $7 million per year. And again, and looking at, the 6.5, we're even looking at, what that provides as far as our staffing and our programs and activities, and looking at financial stability moving forward.
Yeah, so I'm interested in the two questions, because in the two options for increase, because it looks to me like it's a wash between them. They're the same. So you might as well ask for the larger one. It's hard to imagine that it's hard to imagine that the difference between them would be an important factor in voting for it, and yet it might be an important factor when the dust settles and budget has to be made for year after next.
Thanks, Frank. Kitty, you raised your hand?
Yes. When you look at the $1,800 amount that is proposed for the lower of the two questions, it mentions that amount would adequately address increased class sizes, maintain comprehensive programs, and provide financial stability. I was wondering if you could be a little bit more specific about that. For example, on class size, what class sizes would we be having? Would we be able to back off for the increases that we've had to put in place over the last couple of years? Or where will we be at if in fact the second question should pass?
So Roseville has, and we can go further in depth on this, but I think we've talked about this. We've talked about this during budget reduction modes, but also this year. We are on the higher side of class size ranges, I should say, especially I think at the elementary level. So the additional funds, even at this, at the $6.5 million, would help us buy some of those class sizes down. So for example, and this is where we've made some of our cuts. And this is why we've made some of the reductions that we've made to hit our targets instead of hitting some specific programs. If we increase, or if we reduce our class size by one student, like our class size ranges, and they do vary by grade level, but if we reduce that target by one across all of our schools, that costs like $760,000.
So what portion of the increase would be dedicated to class size? Do you have any feel for that?
I don't have any feel off the top of my head, but I think we've also we've been fortunate enough, we've been really targeting class size in recent years reductions. But I think it would also put us in a position to not have to look at some of our other programs and making some reductions there in some of our programs and activities. It would allow us to preserve some of those. In the case of class size, we believe that we can make some improvements to our class size. But I could get that I could pull that information together.
Yeah, I would like to understand because we have had to make increases over the last few years, as we've talked about that $8 million that we've had to reduce. How much of that can we undo, if at all?
Yeah, and I think,
or is it just protecting for future, not having to be bigger?
Yeah, I think what we can look at, because again, we are on the higher side, and I certainly don't want to speak for the superintendent, but we have talked about this. Our hope would be to reduce that class size. I'm a little bit concerned, but we can pull some numbers together. I mean, we could say that we could reduce to class sizes by X amount in 22-23. It's one of those things that as you progress forward, obviously you can't, it's not like we can say we're going to have this class size for the next 10 years.
Of course.
To be a little bit careful about that. That's the only, but we could put something together easily.
Aldo.
Yeah, so I think a little bit of context that's important. Sherry shared a timeline earlier, and there's a lot of unknowns. And of course, the further you look into the future, the harder it is to predict what state funding, et cetera, is going to be. Hence the comment she just made about we can't say 10 years into the future. And of course, if you want financial stability, you're not spending the full amount right away, because the tradition has been not to keep up with inflation, so you'd be cutting in a few years anyway. So there's all that. But I think the context that I wanted to refer to is at the May 25th board meeting, we hope to have an update on the legislative session. And I think that would play into this. I think certainly, in conversations I've been with people, we all want to lower the class size and hopefully get it to before the increases in the last few years. But we both know that the two chambers in the state legislature are very far apart on education funding. So I think it might be a little premature to get a number at this point. We may want to find out more about that. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Aldo. And I think, as Sherry alluded to and you just confirmed, I think then what we're saying is that the knowledge, more specific knowledge about what the numbers could really be is going to be kind of continuous work in progress as we hear what the legislature does, as we put pencils to paper and kind of work over the coming period of time to figure out what that could do. And we just don't know yet what some of the inputs are to even know then what those numbers would be. At this point, it'd just be an estimate based on what we know at this point in time.
Yes.
So,
but I believe collectively the administration, our teaching staff, throughout, I believe that we have heard, the priority obviously being addressing class sizes.
Well, I think to the degree that we can even get some ballparks early on, as Kitty asked for, are we talking on average, the ability to potentially reduce class sizes on average, half a student per class, or 1 or 1.5 or 2, it'll just give some idea of the scale of the impact, I think, that this could have. And I think class size, a particular one, as we've known from recent communications we've gotten from members of the public, and just as is always true, I think our parents, our families, our community, teachers, staff, and all of us on the board are extremely concerned with class sizes and see it as a key outcome to shoot for, is keeping those down. So to the extent that we can translate some of this into its impact on class size, whether that's positive with a passage or potential negative with a failure of the referendum questions, that could be helpful to just put it in context for our community and for the people that we're messaging all this to.
Yes, we can do that.
Any other questions? Rose?
Yeah, I agree with what's been discussed so far, because for me, it's almost like, how do we come up with 1,800, right? And what would the 1,800 do for the district? So the more we could like be transparent about what are the possible ways, not again, like you say, Shari, and our superintendent saying we can't predict, but we do know how much it costs, right? So the idea of looking at the different scenarios of how this will alleviate some of the issues, some of the cuts that we have been needing to make, and how we can maybe build a reserve, like all the different ways that the additional fund will really support the things that we need long term for sustaining the work of the district. Because right now it's kind of like what Frank said, the two seems very close. So how do we come up with 1,800? Why not 1,600 or 1,500? So how do we decide that? Maybe I would love to hear that as to how we decided 1,800 versus the cap, right? Versus the cap.
Sure.
Well, then I'll go ahead and throw in an additional question related to that, Sherry. And again, if there's a short enough answer that we can digest it tonight, if you happen to know, great. If not, it can be for a subsequent discussion. But I'm curious as to how the cap is set. Is it geographic? Like, is it the same 1867.88 per pupil across the state? Is it specific to Roseville? What factors do they look at? Is it just formulaic? What does the state look at in setting the cap?
And we can talk about this a little bit more in the study session, but just a quick answer on the cap. The state sets that cap, and that is the cap for the majority of districts. There are districts that have been grandfathered in with a higher cap.
Great. Yeah, maybe at the study session. And then just a follow up to Frank's comment, I agree. It seems that if 1,800, if we understand that is pretty valid in terms of what we would want, and that's so close to the cap. And if one presumes that the state's authority in setting a cap is that it would be high enough that philosophically they might look at it as kind of an extreme that someone would ask for, then what it says to me, it says that our calculations of what we need are pretty dire because they're pretty close to that cap. We're already almost maxing out at the cap. And so again, if we come to agree that 1,800 is accurate, then yeah, I would probably fall into line with Frank as to say, well, for another $67 out of 1,800, why not just go for the cap and max it out? But anyway, thank you. Other questions or thoughts or comments? Looks like none. And we, as you alluded to, Sherry, we are going to get into this a little bit more during our study session this evening after the end of the regular meeting. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And we'll move on. We move into action items. And the first one is the second reading of the hazing policy. And it looks like Dr. Lake is going to be shepherding this one with us again this evening. Jenny.
Good evening again. Based on your feedback at the April 27th school board meeting during the first reading policy 544, we've made the revisions as suggested and are looking to confirm those revisions. Section 4.0 reporting practices, specifically 4.2 and 4.3. We changed language around the principal's designee and the report taker. And same with 4.3. We made clear to stop the action of hazing and then clarified the report takers again.
Okay. Questions, comments? No one seems to have any. Frank, good, thumbs up. Kitty, question?
I was just going to move that the board approve policy 544 hazing.
I'll second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Clerk Johnson, take the vote, please.
Chair Boguszewski,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Aye.
Director Shaw,
Aye.
Treasurer Goggins,
Aye.
Director Chu,
Aye.
and Clerk Johnson votes aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny, for your work on this.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Next action item, also a second reading, policy 708 crisis management, and Business Director Thompson will be leading us through this. It looks like. Sherry.
Yes, thank you. This is also a part of the regular policy review. There was a first reading on April 27th, and no changes were requested at that time. So we're just bringing that back with the original or with the revisions.
Thank you. If any questions, or else entertain a motion to approve. Anybody?
I move
so-
approval of policy 708 crisis management.
Second.
Kitty,
Awesome.
Kitty
I did-
moved it, and then Todd seconded it. How about that?
Sherry, I did just have a quick
sorry.
clarification type question.
Yes,
I've got
yes.
no problem voting for this, but when we look at the last paragraph, 3.0, I just wanted to know, in my mind, it mentions local emergency agencies will have copies, you know.
Yes.
I'm assuming what we mean by that is local law enforcement agencies. We're also including the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office will have
And-
copies of these reports.
Yes.
I just
And
clarified.
Ramsey County Emergency Services too, beyond the sheriff's office, but yes. County and
Great.
cities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and second on the table. Discussion ended. Curtis, could you take the vote on this one, please?
Chair Boguszewski,
Aye.
Director Shaw,
Aye.
Director Chu,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Aye.
Treasurer Goggins,
Aye.
and Clerk Johnson votes aye.
Thank you. Thank you once again. Final action item this evening. Sherry, back to you for the budget revisions.
Okay. I'm going to see how this works. I'm going to try and just share only because I didn't do a presentation, but I just basically have, I have the board packet that I'm projecting, so you can see the numbers.
Yep.
Okay. So typically, you adopt a budget in June prior to the start of the fiscal year. We do one budget revision, typically, in January or February. Once we know, we know who's actually in the positions, we have a better handle on enrollment. And so we do the one budget revision. This year, we're asking you to adopt a second revision. There's a couple of reasons for that. Because, we've continued to see some of the influx in not only in CARES funding, which is federal funding, which is very helpful to cover costs of the pandemic. But we're also seeing some increased costs. And in some cases, these funds are helping to offset those costs. So, and really what I'm saying is budgeting this year is like budgeting in quicksand because it is unprecedented. But I wanted to give you an update, especially as it compares to fund balance, because we are recognizing some of these additional dollars and using those as they were designed. I'm just going to remind you quickly, as of the revised budget or the budget revision, the one you typically take one action on, the revenue in the general fund at that time was $103 million. We're recognizing some more of those CARES funds, the ESSER funds in the general fund. So we're going to increase that revenue to 108,726,000. At the same time, because we've had some of the shifts on our expenses, for instance, even some of the salaries and benefits, we've made some shifts. Some of those were even between funds, like with community education, with doing the childcare, and then also others salaries and benefits. in positions that weren't filled. We're seeing it, we're reducing our expenses by 774,000. We really shifted those costs because they've been repurposed for under the federal program. So we're shifting some of those costs. So overall, again, we're seeing a reduction in the general fund of $262,000. So that brings our expenses down to 105,823,000. So our difference as far as our deficit for the year, we're estimating to be about 2.1 million. And the reason we're bringing this to you, well, number one, to keep you up to date, but back in January, we thought that deficit would be about closer to 2.9 million. So again, it's that update there, and then also just the update on the federal funds. Same thing occurs in community service. As I mentioned, we're recognizing an additional $524,000 to cover that school age tier 1 childcare. So that increases the revenue in community education. And we're also looking at reducing some expenditures and shifting those to care. So the overall impact there, again, community service has been impacted by the pandemic as well, because so many of their programs are fee-based. And we had projected initially an deficit for the current year of 306,000, or I'm sorry, initially it was projected at 570,000 back in February. Now we're thinking that deficit will be closer to 306,000. So again, improving our financial outlook there as well, due to those due to the federal funds. So I would ask, just on this piece, are there any questions regarding the revisions?
Sherry, I'm a little confused. These numbers aren't the numbers that I see in my packet.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
that would be Sherry's fault. So I realized at 6:08 to be exact, right, Michelle? I realized that I had the wrong set of numbers in there. I had the previous ones. So so they are in the packet that's online. I'm wondering if you clicked on your packet like at 6 o'clock.
No, I download my packet on Sunday usually.
Okay, that.
And unless I get a notification, I won't re-download.
Okay, and that's, I apologize for that. Like I said, I was just lining things up
Sure.
in the packet to present tonight. So I apologize for that.
Do I understand from your commentary now, though, that the numbers that are in our packet are more what was happening in the January, February timeframe? And so now, in essence, what you've said, you have here is that we have an extra 500,000 on the revenue side, and our expenses are actually somewhat less.
Yes.
Which makes the difference that you're reporting here, that we're anticipating a more significant fund balance because of that. And the difference between those two numbers looks like it's about $800,000 different.
That's correct.
Is that the correct way to interpret what
that is the correct way to interpret that? Yes, that is the correct way to interpret it, because the numbers you are looking at is actually what you took action on in February.
Okay.
And I didn't, when I sent it to her until I looked in the packet, I'm, wait, these look like the old numbers.
Okay. Well, so that's excellent news, is that
Yes,
we've
so
been
it
able
is
to make
good
some
news.
progress.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is good news, but if I can put it in context, Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, it means that we thought we were going to have to dip into the fund balance by a certain amount. And now it looks like we'll have to dip into the fund balance, but by a somewhat smaller amount.
By a smaller amount.
So
And
I'm not sure I'd characterize it as good news. It is good news. I characterize it as less bad news.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
it's good news in the fact that, right, it's the federal dollars that help temporarily, right? They're
Right.
Band-Aid, they don't sustain us
Right.
to the future. But and that's exactly what it's designed for, is the impact of the pandemic. And if you recall, a year ago when you adopted your budget, of course, then we thought it was kind of the beginning of the pandemic, and we didn't realize the impact it would have on enrollment and whatnot. I mean, you had adopted what you thought was a balanced budget, and then lo and behold, once we looked at things and realized the impact of our enrollment, our under enrollment, because we did lose, 240 kids, that came to be, your balanced budget turned into about a $2.8 million deficit.
Right. And so also then what you just said for context, it's a less bad impact, and it's a less bad impact because of a non-permanent infusion of federal dollars designed specifically to address COVID expenses.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
See, Mike, I'm going with the glasses half full theory. That's
Okay. Well, I know. I just don't want. The point is, it's not like our worries are anywhere near over. Is I guess at this point I want to make. It's really good news, and it speaks to, again, the judicious shepherding of available dollars by our leadership team and Dr. Sicoli and all of you. But it doesn't, do anything to a permanent or longer term relief that we saw in your earlier presentation, Chair, regarding the inflation gap and all that stuff. We still need, it's not even a question, it's still essential that the first levy question be renewed. And if anything, if we want to even keep pace from that point on in the future, that the second one be approved also, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Correct.
Rose, you threw your hand up.
Yeah. This does not account for the third round too, right? Because we just heard the news from last night that Minnesota just got the number. So nothing has been decided in terms of that third round of infusion.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly, just to give you an update on that, right? The next page is kind of just that update, and you've seen this before. We didn't have all of this filled out. So the CFR funds, this was the money that we spent initially, just to reopen. That had to be spent by December 30th. And that was our first round for childcare and computers and PPE and cleaning supplies and delivering lunch or delivering meals for families. That was that $2.3 million. What you're seeing today in the budget revisions really reflects, you saw part of this before, but now it really reflects, like, pretty much our plan is to use these funds this year, even though we have until September 30th, because we've also received more information about what the allocations and uses are. We're looking then at dollars that have to be spent by September 30th of 2023. And you've seen this too, about $5.9 million. The most recent allocation from the American Recovery Plan is $13.4 million. Again, that has to be spent by September 30th of 2024. That's going to involve much more comprehensive planning and discussion, planning with various stakeholders. Again, as it's been described as a boost. Building something more of a bridge instead of building something where you fall off a cliff in 2024. So there's a lot of work that will happen this next year on that larger pot of money. And again, that money goes away. It does not sustain us. And it could be spent in a combination of ways, not only programming. I mean, we've talked before, we could be looking at a portion or some of those dollars even addressing some of our deferred maintenance, like indoor air quality. That would maybe help speed up that cycle. So there's a lot of discussion that has to happen there. And as far as the money that was issued or that was authorized in December of 2020, we're just getting that like next month. And yes, it will be a while to even pull things together on the larger pot of money. because the state has to issue applications and we'll have to put together a plan.
So another question I have is, this visual is really clear, right? Like the timeline and the deadlines and all that. I'm just wondering, with the budget adjustment in a year that is so, like you say, like dealing with quicksand, where we are having to adjust more than once, it might be very instructive to have that visual too, kind of like our original budget that we approve, and then the first adjustment, and then the second adjustment, and we don't know whether we'll need a third, right? I mean, so I think that might be really helpful, just the way you have laid out the federal funding, to kind of see, like, over time what has happened, right? Over time, we had to make different assumptions, right? Because the money coming is different. The enrollment issue that was not there when we first approved something. So I think that might be really, it's both a way for us to see, but it's also a record of what has happened throughout the pandemic in terms of budget adjustment. Just a thought.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Looks like none. So we need a motion to approve the revised budget.
So move.
Second.
Thank you, Rose. We have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Curtis, could you take the vote, please?
First, Director Chu,
Aye.
Treasurer Goggins,
Aye.
Director Shaw,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Aye.
Chair Boguszewski,
Aye.
and Clerk Johnson votes aye.
Thank you. We're through the action items and into board reports. Anyone want something they'd like to share to start us off this evening? Frank. You're on mute, Frank.
Okay, now.
There you go. Thank you.
But you need to realize all of the embarrassing stuff that you might have heard if I hadn't been on mute.
There you go. That's right. Yep.
Okay, two things. First is the CEAC, the Community Education Advisory Committee, and we're really kind of on tenterhooks there for that in that whole community education realm, because we don't really know what's going to be happening as the future unfolds. But the good news is that the work is going very well in the new building, and that's a big positive. The second thing is 916. Dr. Sicoli mentioned in his update about the joint powers agreement. I didn't talk about this last time because it was sort of put on hold. But the joint powers agreement for 916 hasn't been changed since its initial form in 1969. So it's time for that. But there's a fairly complicated formula which goes into how vested a particular district is in 916, depending on the amount of time, the number of students, and so on. And that impinges on the rules about leaving the district, and that has yet to be, it hasn't been calculated out yet, and so that's been put off. Otherwise, about now, we would have been bringing that to all of the boards around the area, including ours, to vote on it, but that may be coming in June. We heard, we okayed, I just thought I'd mention the contracts for SROs at several of the sites, and they are going with a 1-year contract now in the same way we did, in order to look very carefully at the role of the SRO and how it impinges on students and so on. So that's, and I guess that's something that's coming up with us, would be the SROs. Will there be new contracts? Can someone say in July, or what's the timeline on that?
Yeah, so I've had discussions with Superintendent Sicoli and Assistant Superintendent Lake in anticipation of her assuming the role. And Jenny is working to get together some numbers, some possible funding opportunities, and gather intel on the experience as it's gone over the last year, even in the face of COVID. And we did put it on an upcoming agenda. I forget what the date is, Jenny. I don't remember if what we decided.
Study session on June 8th.
Study session on June 8th, and then for possible action on June 22nd.
Okay, and lastly, there is a really a 916 designed conference that's going to happen in June, and it's really about, it's called P3, where that is P3 standing for, let me see, go to get what, people, places, and programming. And what it does is really look very carefully at 916 and how it functions. The people, the places, the architects will come in and talk about what happens at 916, and the programming will be covered. And they've got a lot of people interested from across the country to do this conference. It has been offered free to the 916 board members. And so I think I will do it. It's happening in June 21st. But along with my participating in it, I have access to the conference presentations for about 6 months. And I think I might then pass that along to whoever will be taking over from me at 916, because it seems like a superb introduction to the district for whoever is going to be on the board in my stead starting in January. That's it for me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Nobody? Curtis got his hand up. Okay. It's like, there you go.
Okay, sorry, I was just getting my stuff together. First thing is we had 2 AMSD meetings, one with the legislative committee, but what I'm going to talk about is our board of directors meeting last week. We had 2 sets of speakers, and the first one was Andre Prawl, the finance director for the Minnesota Department of Education, who gave us an overview of the federal COVID relief funds, which was a good thing because, frankly, not every district has a Sherry Thompson to explain things. I felt very well versed in everything that he had to say. So actually, she had to say. So which then took us to a very interesting presentation by Dr. Julio Caesar about students enrolled in late start time districts reporting higher academic achievement and sleeping more. Which was interesting. That was a big thing for them. It's not only higher achievement, but they actually slept more. And this was done. This was a study that was done within the state. So 8 schools altogether, 8 school districts altogether. 4 districts where they didn't change their start times, and 4 districts where they did. And they did see a small increase in achievement. Admittedly, they said more study is necessary. The big thing they did say that they did see was that the kids actually, when you push the time, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, kids actually do sleep more. So it's not that they're just going to actually sleep more, which can be a good thing. So, so be very interested to see where this study goes, and maybe we'll address that another time. The next thing is, as I mentioned before, the social studies standards group has been meeting almost daily I'm tired to get the second draft out, and we're still looking at the first part of June. So wish us luck. And I will say it again. Everyone, please, when it comes out, take a look at it. Let us know what you think, because we can't make it right if you don't tell us. So, but I think you're going to find, no spoilers, but I think you're going to find that the changes well taken. You're gonna love it. So, the final thing I'm going to on my list here is last week, as everyone here knows, was Teacher Appreciation Week, and we appreciate our teachers every week, but last week was it was a lot of fun to watch different schools show their spirit, and my hats off to Emmett D. Williams for taking the prize of bragging rights this year, and especially with their staff all dressing up as Captain Underpants. You can't beat that. I mean, come on. But I will say, little Canada will be back next year, and we're gonna take it. So I just like to thank. Now, okay, is when do you officially take your role as assistant? Okay, well, Melissa Sonic, I'm not sure what your role is right now. Okay, but we thank Melissa Sonic for leading all this, and it looked like everyone had a good time. I know I had a good time following along, and I don't think any district has more fun during Teacher Appreciation Week than we do. So.
Great. Thank you, Curtis. Kitty.
Want to report on a couple of things. One, I had a chance to attend the Brimhall Town Hall, and Dr. Lake presented the presentation that Dr. Sicoli has been recently presenting to all the different schools around things that are going well, and kind of a financial picture for the district, there were lots of good questions and information about that. The one to congratulate the Brimhall group for the readathon. It was over 1 million minutes read by the students, and they raised over $9,400 in the effort, which was obviously really phenomenal. And then I just thought I'd share with you a couple of the questions that Principal Bussman posed to folks to really continue that input and that two-way communication. She was asking about conference windows, at least those present really liked the flexibility of Zoom and the fact that they could be in different locations and still participate. So it's more able to get both parents present. They really like the community event in the fall and want to continue, but there was some concern about safety with the pandemic, especially, or the situation we'll be in. And so some consideration to kind of maybe splitting the groups. And then the last one I found particularly interesting, which she was asking parents what their needs were for opportunities for hosting conversations with parents around the racism pandemic. And it was interesting to hear a lot of the different perspectives. And I just really love the fact that as a district, we're having those kind of conversations and posing it to parents to see what kind of support they need as they're working to raise anti-racist children. Got to attend the Unstuck series, which the leadership and training does. And it's just every time I get to go, it's just amazing. It's really a very strong program for social emotional learning. And I can't recommend it highly enough. If you can make an effort, there's still one left on May 27th at 6:15. Just one quote for that was, "Your character suffers when your negative self-talk gets embedded inside of you." That's one thing that sort of stuck with me, but these students do an amazing job in really putting together a program. Wanted to just do a shout out to the students who participated in the Human Rights, Inclusion, and Engagement Commission's Creative Art Project. We had lots of students participating. It was kind of last fall that the group invited students living or attending Roseville area schools to create something that addressed the upheaval and unrest that took place in 2020. And they have posted 3 winners on this the City Council site. And so it was fun to go see it. Excellent essay by Evan Bierscheid, excellent drawing by Sophie Hopper, and another really good essay by Enoch Van. And then the other thing was just also a shout out to the History Day recognition that we had 2 students who made it advanced state competition in Minnesota History Day, which is really exciting. Alicia J. and Karave C. So, and thank to their teacher Gerard Nowicki for working with them. But it was fun looking at their projects and seeing what the progress is. And there's just so many exciting opportunities that our teachers provide for our students. And it's always wonderful to see.
Thank you, Kitty. Rose or Todd, anything?
Go ahead,
Todd.
Todd. Yeah, no, go ahead, Todd. Yeah.
Yep. I had an opportunity to attend the Falcon Heights PTA meeting last night. A couple highlights. The PTA received an update on how things are going with, it's a new math program called Prodigy that seems to have taken Falcon Heights by storm. It's a really cool math role-playing game. There are quests, there are adventures. She did a little demo for those of us who are new to it, but it supports students, parents, and teachers. And kids are loving it and really improving math skills. So I thought it was great. It looked like a little Lord of the Rings meets math. I mean, it looked good to me. So, but it's called Prodigy. So that was a great update. And the PTA voted to release some funds for a special 6th grade graduation event. This year's 6th graders at Falcon Heights, they miss out on the annual 5th grade Audubon trip, due to COVID-19. So that this year's 6th graders will be receiving a special time to have some ice cream from an ice cream truck and listen to singer Kat Perkins. I guess she's been on The Voice. So she'll be taking out her guitar, and it sounds like it's gonna be a great time, and it's gonna be set up for in-person and distance learning kids to Zoom in to be a part of this special 6th grade leaving event. But that was something that they voted on last night. So definitely one of the highlights. And I would like to just shout out to Curtis. Curtis, before I read those social studies standards, can I sleep in for a half hour or an hour first? Then I'll probably be a little bit better and up for reading them. Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks, Todd. Rose, anything tonight?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I attended the PTA meeting for RAMS, and Dr. Sokoli and Dr. Lake were there presenting the kind of the whole operating levy, looking at kind of the presentation that they've been doing across the schools. The one thing that really stood out for me was when a parent suggested that kind of like through the pandemic, what are some of the new learnings that the district have been able to have, and how might that be communicated to families? I thought that really stuck with me, right? How can we be transparent about all that learning so that our families could be part of that journey to understand what went well, what can we take moving forward. So that really stuck with me. So I thought that I wanted to mention that. And then, so I just wanted to mention that this is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month of May. And I'm going to send out a resource that is really great. That is a national resource that is a collaboration between the Library of Congress, National Archives, a National Endowment for the Humanities. So I'll send that out maybe to share to our staff. And as part of that, yours truly is on three panels within a week here. And one of them is actually organized by the City of Roseville, the Human Rights Commission. And one of the commissioners, Grace Lee, will be moderating a panel. There are three of us. I'm on it as school board member. And then there are two other people who are going to be talking about kind of the anti-Asian sentiment. And also I told her, I said, I would love to also for us to lift up what is also how we have contributed to this country. So that is happening as part of the Compass program of 9 North. And it will be recorded this Thursday at 7 o'clock. And will be live on Facebook, but it will be recorded so people can go back and look at that. So I'm very honored to be representing the district to do that. But I wanted to do that shout out, and hopefully that across the district, people, that our students, our families, and our teachers really celebrate the Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. So,
thank you, Rose. I don't have any events to report on, so maybe I'll just end up with circling back to what Curtis started with, which is, again, this is our first board meeting after this year's Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week and the Staff Spirit Appreciation Week. And, the note that the board sent out at the beginning of last week, I think was very heartfelt. We do see, we are constantly amazed and awed by what all of the staff have done this year to, as we said, not just maintain things, but to elevate and rise above, in spite of the weight of the pandemic and the racist incidents and all that kind of dragging us all down. So you are our heroes. We see that. We know it. We don't always say it. We don't say it enough. But just a great big thank you and appreciation to all the staff in all the roles across the district. I wish every week could be Staff Appreciation Week. So thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. We see what you do, and we appreciate you're what it's all about. So thank you. With that, after we adjourn, why don't we take a couple-minute break, and then we'll reconvene for the study session. So the regular portion of the meeting is hereby adjourned. We'll see you all in maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.